Francis Marion Snow, a tenant farmer, was born in Texas on 6 June 1881. He was the son of James Simon Snow and his wife Elizabeth Rushing. On Tuesday, 6 October 1925, Snow married Maggie May Olds in Erath County in Texas. This was Maggie's fourth marriage, and she had 2 children. These were Ollie Wayne Connolly and Bernard D. Connolly, both born to her first husband, Samuel Connolly. Little Ollie had died in 1922, aged around 7, while her first husband and third husband, William Henry Polston, were murdered at Waco in 1921 and 1924 respectively. Snow had lived in the shack for around 15 years and barely spoke to any of his neighbours, as there had been a rumour going round that he was a fugitive from justice. The Snows, Maggie's mother, Samantha Ann Rachel Jones Smith Olds, and her 18-year-old son, Bernard, known as Bernie, all lived at the property. But on Friday 27th November 1925, tragedy struck. That day, Maggie had allowed cows onto the cotton patch, and this resulted in a huge argument between the couple. Snow snapped and bludgeoned his wife to death with a wooden club. He then turned on his deaf and blind 74-year-old mother-in-law, killing her with an axe. She'd had no idea she was in danger when the attack occurred. Earlier that day, Bernie had headed off to Stephenville with a load of wood and hadn't yet returned, so after Snow hid the bodies, he went looking for his stepson. He found him and explained that his mother was ill and that he should return home, but this was a ruse, and after arriving at the farm, Snow shot Bernie twice in the back with a Winchester rifle, killing him instantly. Now Snow had 3 bodies to deal with. He used the axe to deal with his wife and mother-in-law's bodies and burned their remains, placing their bones in the fireplace. He then turned his attention to Bernie. He stripped off all his clothes, apart from his underwear, and took his dead stepson to Cedar Point, where he decapitated him. Sometime later that evening, he placed the boy's head in a sack and took it down to the cellar of an abandoned farmhouse at Moor Farm, some 6 miles from his home. On Wednesday, 9th December, a young trapper called Jesse Elvis Riggs happened to go into the farmhouse, and along with a fellow trapper, they discovered the head of Bernie. Along with Riggs was Ben Aycock and his dog Butch, and the pair had been setting traps at his grandfather's farm. Aycock set a trap outside an abandoned farmhouse on the farm, while Riggs went inside to set one, and that was when he made the gruesome discovery. He'd noticed the bloody sack and called out to Aycock, who opened it up. The 2 men jumped into their car and headed off to alert the local police. Riggs later said, "The head was staring straight at me." Moore, who owned the farm, claimed his livestock acted strangely and it was difficult to drive them out of Cedar Point. When investigators arrived at the house, they knew immediately that the murder hadn't taken place in the cellar, or indeed the farmhouse, due to the lack of blood. They also knew the decapitation hadn't been the cause of death. They noticed a knife wound on Bernie's chin, so either that or bludgeoning to death had been the cause. It was also apparent to them that the perpetrator must have known the area, as when the head had been found, it was the only building out of the other 4 abandoned properties in the area that had a basement. Police had no idea who the victim was, so the head was put on display for identification at the local morgue in hope that someone could identify him. Thousands of people paraded past the head, but finally someone recognised him as Bernie Connolly, and that was Ida Christie. Now that police had the identification, Francis Snow was questioned by Sheriff David Hassler at his home. Initially, Snow told him that Maggie, Samantha Olds and Bernie had left home to visit Waco on 27th November. However, it was soon clear to the sheriff and Texas Ranger Stuart Stanley that inconsistencies were appearing in Snow's story, so he was taken into custody and hauled in for further questioning. Snow was held in Tarrant County Jail in Fort Worth for his own protection, as a mob would have lynched him, it was believed. The police asked and received a search warrant for Snow's farm, and it was during the search they found 2 piles of ashes in the yard and bone fragments of Maggie and Mrs. Olds in the fireplace, as well as dried blood on the axe. They also noticed blood on Snow's wagon and found the Winchester rifle. It was said the faint outline of a woman's face was imprinted on the bricks by the chimney in the fireplace. On Friday, 11th December 1925, Snow confessed to the murder of his stepson and, accompanied by the sheriff, the deputy, 2 rangers, officers from Fort Worth and the district attorney, Samuel Morris Russell, took them to where the rest of Bernie's remains were. They were 16 miles away from the head, but while standing there, Snow confessed to killing his wife and mother-in-law. Snow's trial began on Monday 18th January 1926, with the defence pleading insanity, but the judge was having none of it. Snow had written a confession in front of numerous witnesses, so that in itself was damning. It had been obtained by the Assistant District Attorney, W.H. Tolbert, of Tarrant County, and Ranger Tom Hickman in Fort Worth. He also claimed it was the same bullet that killed his wife that also killed his mother-in-law immediately following the fatal shooting of her son, who'd come to her defence during the quarrel. Connolly, he said, had come at him with a shovel handle, and he claimed his wife was shooting at him with the rifle. He never made any reference to the decapitation or the bones being burned, simply stating, "I was just mad." None of this rang true with the evidence the police had found. Snow was found guilty and was sentenced to death. He lodged an appeal, but this was denied, and he was incarcerated in the Huntsville unit in Huntsville, Texas. While in prison, he confessed to further murders, including that of Jean Graves and another inmate, who he said had been taunting him. He also confessed to killing a man in Palo Pinto County and another in San Saba County. It was also believed he'd murdered a person in Mineral Wells in 1912, but he never confessed to that killing. Snow was executed by electric chair on 12 August 1927 in Huntsville. He would go down in history as the Bloody Butcher of Stephenville.